How's that? Okay. We're going to be starting here in just a minute. If those in the back want to come up and join us. All right. Well, good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to this presentation. This is, of course, sponsored by the Farmer City Genealogical and Historical Society and Trinity Community Fellowship here. Appreciate the church allowing us to come and do this presentation here. They have a nice big screen. I've got lots of pictures to show you, and so this is a real treat. I want to say a special thanks to Bob Scarborough and Susan Ryan and Bob Tharp for allowing me to come up here and do this. I'm not from Farmer City, but my father is from Farmer City. And so I came up here all the time as a kid, Thanksgiving, Christmas. We've come up a lot. And so I feel like this is my second home, even though I was born and raised in Arkansas, and I live in Arkansas. But I want to say a special thanks to Pastor Dave and Susie. Now, let's see, I'm going to pronounce it right. This good German name, Schneemann? Schneemann, I got it, Schneemann. Yes, ma'am.
Are you in relation to Pat Lackey?
Yes, she's my aunt.
Then I know your grandpa.
Oh, okay, my grandpa, Russell and Dolly, yeah. Had Size Dairy Bar. If anybody remembers or heard of Size Dairy Bar in Farmer City, that was my family. My last name is Sypult, so they called it Size Dairy Bar. And so that was my grandpa. And then my dad.
He delivered milk.
And he delivered milk. Yes. Seal test, right? Seal test. Yes, the best. All right. Well, welcome everybody. My presentation tonight is entitled The Big Four Railroad in Farmer City, Illinois. Now, first, let me just do a quick introduction before I really get into the program. The next slide, that's my family. I have 5 children. They're all grown. 4 of them are married. I've got 6 grandchildren. So that's all my kids and my wife there in that picture. The next picture is my father, Bob Sypult, or Robert. Some of you remember my dad. Oh, that makes me feel great. He was born in 1924 in Glen Avon, near Bellflower. Raised in Bellflower, raised in Farmer City. He went off to World War II, came back, worked in Farmer City at the power plant, and then he helped with the family business, the Size Dairy Bar. Then he went up to St. Louis, Michigan, and was a power plant manager for their municipal power plant. Then he found out there's this new thing called air conditioning. So he moved down to Arkansas where a Navy buddy of his was, and he started the first air conditioning business in Rogers, Arkansas, and that's where I was born. So that's where I come into the picture. But my dad was the first one that ever told me about the Big Four railroads, so I want to dedicate this to him. He passed away in 2009. Now, the next picture, if you are coming to this presentation thinking, the Illinois Central, I want to see the Green Diamond and all, that's another presentation. This presentation is the other railroad in Farmer City called the Big Four. That's what the locals called it for many, many years. It has many different names, and I'll explain some of those names. But it was basically under the umbrella of this next slide is the New York Central system. You probably heard of the New York Central system. It was a huge railroad, over 10,000 route miles, mostly out east and northeast. And the next picture shows one of their famous trains. This is in Chicago, one of their streamlined trains called the 20th Century Limited. So if you've ever heard of the New York Central or the 20th Century Limited, this is the same basically railroad we're talking about, even though it was kind of an independent entity of the New York Central system. So let's begin. No, go right ahead. And I think are we trying to record this tonight? Good. So there may be a recording of this, and if not, I may go home and just record it and put it out on YouTube so that you all can have it, because I've got lots of information to share with you. All right. So we're going to go to this next slide, and I want to take you back to the year 1869. This was a pivotal year in our country's history. The first transcontinental railroad in the United States was completed with remember the driving of the Golden Spike? You probably read about that in school at Promontory, Utah on May the 10th of 1869. Here's some other facts that happened in 1869. Ulysses Grant was inaugurated U.S. president, and the Standard Oil Company was founded by a man named John D. Rockefeller. On November 6th, the first intercollegiate game of American football was played. Rutgers University defeated Princeton by a score of 6-4 in a college football game. First college football game, all in 1869. December 7th, outlaw Jesse James committed his first confirmed bank robbery in Gallatin, Missouri. This was the beginning of what would later we call the Gilded Age. On October the 1st, 1969, the first railroad entered DeWitt County, Illinois, and the first railroad started running trains through Farmer City, October 1st, 1869, and also in 1869, this place called Mount Pleasant changed its name to Farmer City. It all happened in 1869, and the railroad had a lot to do with that. What was the railroad? Well, it was actually incorporated on July 20th, 1869. A new railroad was incorporated called the Indianapolis, Bloomington, and Western Railway. And so for the next 21 years, the locals here in Farmer City would refer to this as the IB&W. The IB&W route is what they called it. But they also had another nickname for it because the trains were slow, much better than horse and buggy, okay? Remember, there's no improved roads at this time. Much better than horse and buggy, but they call it the IB&W, I better walk. True story. So here's a map from 1869 just showing the line, and you can see I have circled there. You might not be able to read it, but it says Santa Ana. And I guess because this is still the Santa Ana Township, is that correct? And so that's where the railroad, you can see it was basically a railroad that ran from Peoria down to Pekin and over to Indianapolis. When the railroad, early on when the railroad was established, the Big Four took control of it. We'll talk about that in just a minute. They actually ran from Peoria all the way to Springfield, Ohio. So that's the railroad that came through here in Farmer City. So what did it look like back in the 1880s? Well, here's a consolidation 280 locomotive, 2 pilot wheels on the front, 8 driver wheels, and no trailing wheels behind the driver wheels except for what you see in what they call the coal car, basically. This was a rod engine, wood burner. The tender carried water and wood. Engineer sat on the right. The fireman sat on the left, so it's kind of like driving a car in Great Britain. Cow catcher on the front. Cows. I understand there was a time when they really didn't have fences and the cows would be up on the railroad right of way. So that platform on the front of the locomotive was designed to hopefully push the cow out of the way without necessarily killing it. The coupling systems back then were link and pin. So you had a bar with a hole in it, and you would put that inside a coupling and drop a pin down. They call it link and pin. It's very dangerous. Back in those days, it is said that you could tell an experienced railroader by how many digits of his hand were missing. Okay, true story. Here's another picture of a 440 American type locomotive, the 119. Now this one is carrying coal in the back, so by this time they had graduated to burning coal. What about the first passenger cars that came through Farmer City? Well, they would have looked like this. They were wooden in construction. So immediately when the railroad came through in October 1st, 1869, passenger train service began through Farmer City. This picture was taken in 1871 at the Jackson and Sharp passenger car company in Wilmington, Delaware. This was a wood baggage smoking car, and it had link and pin coupling, very dangerous type of coupling system. And I have one more early picture. There's very few pictures of this that I could find. But this is in 1872, again at Jackson and Sharp. This is a express mail baggage car number 6. I looked at an early timetable that showed the frequency of trains and their schedules that would come through Farmer City. And by 1876, there were, on just this line, there were 8 passenger trains a day through Farmer City, traversing mostly between Peoria and Indianapolis. In 1871, the Gilman, Clinton, and Springfield Railroad built a line through Farmer City. This line would ultimately come under control of the Illinois Central. That's the line that's still there. The tracks are still there, and occasionally you see a train on, okay? So that line came through in 1871. So this line that I'm talking about tonight, the Big Four, predated it by a few years. Okay, the next picture just shows you an old employee pass. This would be if railroad officials would hand out passes. You can ride our train for free, and they would exchange from other railroads where they could ride the train for free for a given period of time, generally a year. It's interesting, this pass I found, I go around on eBay and WorthPoint and all these websites, and I'm always looking for, I'm not looking to necessarily buy, I just like to get the picture because it tells the history. And this particular pass, instead of saying you remember it was IBW, they started with Bloomington on this one. So they put the word Bloomington first. I thought that was pretty interesting. But here's what's really was interesting to me in the research was on June 18th, this 1876 IBW timetable shows the addition of a line from Champaign to Whiteheath that went on to Decatur, and it went on to Havana. This is where the the Monticello Railroad Museum runs a portion of this trackage. And on the back of the pass, if you look close, well, you can see it, the print there, the principal stations included Monticello, Lincoln, Mason City, and Havana. So the IB&W, the I Better Walk, for a short period of time also controlled those lines too. Now, this was a time of financial upheaval. In the United States, there was a financial panic. I think it was, 1893, there was a financial panic. There was railroads were going bankrupt all the time. They were in receivership. They had probably bit off more than they could chew, and sure enough, they only controlled the line from 1872 to 1879. They eventually, they went into receivership, and they eventually had to hand that line over to the Illinois Central, took control of it. But here's a map showing when they had the extension. If you look at the dark lines, like right in the middle of that picture, you can see the extension that they had. Here's an 1874 timetable just showing, the next picture will show the extension. You can see towns: Havana, Mason City, Lincoln, Clinton, Weldon, D-Land. My aunt is 97 years old and lives in D-Land. And so that's Aunt Joanne, not Pat's sister, yeah. So back to the core of the IB&W. This December 13th, 1874 official guide of the railway schedule shows an express train leaving Peoria. Peoria was milepost 0 for our purposes tonight. Leaving Peoria at 7:30 in the evening, traveling 212 miles to Indianapolis, arriving at 6:50 a.m. the next morning. So I did the calculation. That was an 11-hour, 20-minute ride, averaging roughly 18 miles per hour. And folks, that was fast at that time. I mean, that was like space age fast to them at the time. But anyway, they called it the IB&W. So from 1869 to 1890, everyone here in Farmer City and in the area called this railroad the IB&W. But in the turbulent 1880s, the railroad went into bankruptcy. It would be reorganized in February 1890, and I'm going to give you a new name now. It's going to be reorganized as the Peoria and Eastern. Remember that name, Peoria and Eastern. Everybody called it the Big Four, and I'll explain why. Because it was the Peoria and Eastern was leased to the Big Four Railroad, which was then controlled by the New York Central System, the big system. So let me show you a ghost. I took this picture yesterday in Farmer City on Allen Street. You know where the city municipal power plant is? My dad worked at that power plant. My dad told me, my dad was in the war, fought the Germans. He was in the Navy, came back from the war, and he said, I would be working at the power plant at night, and we'd hear the lonesome whistle, steam locomotive. This is back when they had steam locomotives. I'd hear the lonesome whistle, and here comes that train around the corner. It's on the Big Four. And he said he could tell by the way they blew the whistle that it was Whiskey Bill at the throttle. Whiskey Bill. Now keep that Whiskey Bill in mind, because the story's I'm gonna develop the story as we go. But this is still, I took this yesterday in Farmer City on Allen Street. Look at there, P&ER property line. There's one on both sides of Allen Street, right there. And it shows, they put in these concrete markers, and I don't know how deep they go, probably 20 feet. But anyway, they put in these concrete markers to show their property line way back when. So remember, P&E, Peoria and Eastern, that's what they called it. So what is the Big Four? We keep calling it the Big Four. What is the Big Four? Well, it's not 4 railroads, it's 4 towns, cities. 4 large cities: Cleveland, Cincinnati, Chicago, and St. Louis. This was an independent railroad called the Big Four. It later came under control of the New York Central, but that's why the locals here, from 1890, they didn't call it IBW anymore, they called it the Big Four. Here's a timetable showing 1894 timetable? Yes, September 1894 timetable, and there's their logo. Here's something neat. Let's go to the next one. This was in the Farmer City Fair book for 1890. Look what it says. Big Four route. Formerly the IB&W, right? And it's the most desirable east and west. Look where you can go. You can explore the world. The arrangement of cars being such that passengers by this route virtually secure through coaches or to or from Lincoln, Nebraska, Kansas City, St. Joseph, Atchison, Omaha, Pacific Junction, Columbus, Ohio. And then they had half-fare seekers excursions. And the depot agent in Farmer City at that time was W.H. Scheidler. And so I thought that was pretty neat. Now this next slide probably is going to animate. No, it didn't animate. Okay, it's good. They went through several corporate changes. So let me walk you through the corporate changes and try not to thoroughly confuse you, okay? It started out as IB&W. It went, if you'll look with me right here, it went to the Big Four. The Big Four then controlled the Peoria and Eastern. In 1890, it became the Peoria and Eastern. And the Big Four controlled it, but they were actually controlled by the New York Central System. In 1968, the Pennsylvania Railroad and the New York Central Railroad merged to create an entity called Penn Central. So that's what I remember. My grandfather lived on, is there a William Street in Farmer City? William and Richardson at the corner is where my grandfather lived when I was a little kid. And I would hear the whistle, and I'm just a little squirt, and I would hear, this is in the 60s, and I'm a little squirt, and I run out there, and all I see is a few freight cars, and then I see this green caboose, and it's that color green right there, which you'll see in my presentation. In 1975, several Eastern railroads went bankrupt, and so government created a new entity called Conrail, and then so all of a sudden, this railroad was called Conrail. And then Conrail was later divested and split up between 2 railroads called the CSX and the Norfolk Southern. And it came under the control of Norfolk Southern, but the Norfolk Southern, which you know now, they have trains in the area, they never ran a train through Farmer City. The line just sat there in the weeds. So I wanted to give you that background. Now let's get back to Farmer City for just a minute. This next picture, anybody ever heard of this guy? You have? Okay, excellent, excellent. He wrote lots of articles for the Farmer City Journal in the 40s and the 50s about the history of Farmer City, but not only that, he really liked trains. And so he wrote about the depot agents, and he wrote about the passenger trains and the depots. You can go online, there is a website where you can search all the Farmer City newspapers for free, And you can read his articles. He wrote a few books. He wrote a book about the great Chatsworth wreck on the Toledo, Peoria, and Western. He wrote a book called The History and Romance of Danville Junction, or When Rails Were the Only Trails. He wrote that. That was his first book. He wrote that in 1942. And those books are both available to download free from the University of Illinois website. So check that out. But this guy, he's buried out in the cemetery, Maple Grove Cemetery, where my grandparents are buried. He's buried out there, and I found his grave yesterday. It's really interesting. I won't spend a lot of time on this, but his father served in the Union Army in the Civil War. And then after the Civil War, they settled in Farmer City. And then later he was born, and he was born in 1882. He passed away in 1961 at the age of 79. It was an elevator accident in a Champaign hospital. Isn't that horrible? But anyway, so here we go. The other railroad that came through, okay, this is the Gilman, Clinton, and Springfield, which is the railroad that's still there. Farmer City residents, you know where Plum Street's at? St. John Street. Anyway, that's all right where the depots were. Now, Bob, I think it was you or Bob Tharp, put on the social media, you did it. Come and find out why the depots were so far away from the downtown district. Well, I don't know, but I went and researched the newspaper. I want to see if my answer adds up with your answer. They were building the roads, the D-Land Road up into Farmer City and the Clinton Road into Farmer City, and right there where they met, they were building those roads. And so the business district, I think in 1879, there was a great fire in Farmer City. It burned down almost all the businesses except for 2. And the business leaders got together and they were trying to decide, do we relocate the business district up where the depots are? It's over a half mile away. Do we do that? Or do we stay here? And they after a lot of debate, sounds like it was split about 50-50, they decided to stay there. Bob, does that harmonize?
Where the train tracks were.
It's where the train tracks were. Yeah. And it's where they crossed. And so it would make sense, you put the depots there because people may change train. They may come in from Indianapolis to Farmer City, but then they want to go to St. Louis. So that's where the depots ended up. And I'll tell some more stories about that as we go. Okay, next one just shows another map. For a time, they had a Union Depot right there. You can kind of see it looks like an upside down L, but it served both railroads going both ways. This is the Big Four. This is the Illinois Central. And you can see they also had what they called Y tracks or junction tracks, where a train could come in and move over to the other railroad, interchange cars, and come back. You're going to see here in a moment there was a horrible derailment in 1910, and it fouled up the main line. And so now it's like today, there was a semi accident outside of town today, and it stopped all the traffic. Is that I-74? Is that what that is? It stopped all the traffic. Well, the same thing happens to the railroad. When there's derailment, everything stops. So now the passenger trains can't run and the freight trains. Well, what they did is they ended up doing this little maneuver here. Here's how it would work. A train coming from Indianapolis would come into Farmer City like this, get on the Y track, go over to Illinois Central, and then Y back up, and they probably had to run the engine around to the front end. But anyway, they would Y back around and continue on because this area was fouled, and I'll show you that picture in just a moment. Okay, next picture. Yes?
So was Farmer City established before the railroad? And I wonder because the street grid is north-south, the other railroad's at an angle. And so
yes.
that were kind of the typical 100-mile water stop,
Mm-hmm.
they're at the same angle as the railroad.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, that's a good question. Mount Pleasant was established before the railroad.
Okay.
So that may have been why your angles are different. Yeah. Okay, so the next picture, this is an ancient picture I found. It purports to be Farmer City. I can't confirm it because I don't know that they had a water tank here, but this shows a water tank and a stock yard where the railroads would haul the livestock on the stock cars and they could unload them right there. So you see that. The next picture shows a train. Again, I question, because it almost looks like this is a hilly terrain. It's not flat. It doesn't look flat to me. So I question whether this is Farmer City, but this could be a train coming into Farmer City. But here's the picture, the next picture I wanted to show you. Yeah, this was the wreck, May 27th, 1910. Let me just read you a little quote from the newspaper. This is amazing. 11 refrigerator cars filled with fresh meat were thrown from the track a few rods west of the Illinois Central Big Four crossing in this city at 12:45 Wednesday afternoon. 8 of the cars piled up in a confused mass and were stripped and battered, but 3 remained upright on the ties. While none of the cars broke open and their high-priced contents will probably be saved with slight damage, the wreck is bound to be a costly one as the track was torn away for a number of yards. The interlocking system was ruined at that point, and most of the cars will need a lot of repairs. The unlucky train was the newest of 2 special meat trains that had been making the trip from Bloomington to Cincinnati each day. It was put on only last week, but the other had been running for months. The run starts at Kansas City and is brought to Bloomington on what they called the Chicago and Alton Railroad. So anyway, they said there was a broken spring bolt in the interlocking system, and we'll talk more about what that is in just a moment. But they're at the tower, and it caused the cars to jump the tracks. So that's Farmer City, and that's where they had to use the Y tracks to get the trains through until they could get the tracks repaired for the regular trains. Let's talk about the depot in Farmer City. Here's the not the original, but one of the early P&E, Peoria and Eastern, or Big Four, same thing, depot. And notice a wood construction. Some of you might remember this depot. There's a tower to the left. We'll talk more about that. And you can see the semaphore blades up at the top, the signal for the interlocking tower. Here's another picture. And what I love about this picture is see the lunchroom. Does everybody see the lunchroom off to the right? The Big Four not only had a depot, but they had a lunch, they called it the Big Four lunch counter. And when Clive Burford wrote these articles back in the 40s, he had talked to another old-timer that remembers when all this was new. And he said that that was the best place to get a ham sandwich, 5 cents. And he said they really put the ham on the sandwich. 5 cents for a ham sandwich. So, here's another picture. Notice in the distance, you can see the semaphore, you can see some elevators. These boxes in the front, I looked up those boxes. On the boxes, they say, those wood boxes say, Presto, oh light. And I looked it up on Google, and it was a company in Indianapolis on the Peoria and Eastern, and they entered the storage battery field in 1914 with the purchase of Pumpally Battery Company. So that may be a box of batteries, storage batteries. Here's a colorized postcard showing the Big Four station. Now what you're seeing off to the right is the Illinois Central Station. That was built in 1886. What you're seeing then to the left, you see the lunchroom. Then you see I'll use my little laser here. You'll see the Peoria and Eastern depot here, and then the interlocking tower here. And that interlocking tower was there for a long time. I actually got pictures of it when I was a 13-year-old. But anyway, Jack Keefe, who is here tonight, shared some pictures with me. He took this one on June the 12th, 1963. The last passenger train on the Big Four through Farmer City was called the Corn Belt Special. And its last run was October 14th, 1957, exactly 68 years ago last week. And Jack was on the train. You just get better with age, Jack. Here we go. This is a list. If some of you that have lived in Farmer City all your lives, maybe you'll recall some of these names. I sat down with my 97-year-old aunt today, and I went through these names. And some of them were her classmates. They were her classmates. And I asked her, I said, how many would come to your class reunion if you had one now? And she says, I'm the only one left. Class of 1943, maybe? I'm not sure. But anyway, does anybody recognize any names? Which one? Lyle? Okay. Yeah, Lyle was one of the clerks. Uh-huh. Yes, Betty. Uh-huh. Okay. Now, some of those names over on the right, even my aunt didn't know because those go back to the 1890s, so you probably don't remember those folks. But here's a lady you probably remember. This was Mildred Millie Satterfield Grinley. She graduated from Farmer City High School in 1943, and the day she graduated, she went to work for the Big Four as a clerk at the depot. Now, she, along with the lady named, let me go back to that real quick. That lady named Betty Anderson Lewis, she and Betty Anderson Lewis drew up this depot plan a few years ago and gave it to the museum here in Farmer City. And I'm so glad they did, because I was wondering, what does the depot look like inside? Well, let me tell you her story. She started working for the Big Four in Farmer City as a clerk for William Ferris, who was the agent from 1922 to 1949. She started work there on her graduation day in May 1943. She resigned the last of June 1947, got married, and moved to Mahomet. One of the incidents she recorded, and she wrote this down, I've got it in her handwriting, was one day when she was working there during the winter. Now remember, this would be probably during World War II, or at the very end of World War II. She was working in the depot during the winter. She looked over at the wall above the stove in the office. She saw flames coming through the wall. She remarked to Bill Ferris, the depot agent, "Bill, would you look at that?" He jumped up, and I thought the expression, she said, I thought by the expression on his face, he would like to swat me with the coal shovel since I didn't seem to be too concerned. It didn't take us long to get the fire out. They lived to talk about it. What did they do in the depot? Well, here's one thing they did. One of the responsibilities of the depot agent, this will be on the next picture, was to validate tickets. When they would have the printed tickets, you go to the depot agent, you walk up to the depot and say, "Hey, I want to take a train to Indianapolis." And he said, "Okay, the train time is this. You need a ticket. Here's how much the fare is. You pay the fare." They give you the ticket, and they would validate the ticket. On the left is what is called an Aurora ticket validator. On the right is a photo of the big brass, of the brass Big Four ticket dater die from Farmer City. The agent would set the date with the rollers on the dater, and it had ink on it, and they would put this ticket die dater over, and they would punch it, and it would look like this. This is a photo of an actual big ticket that's dated July 8th, 1944, from Farmer City. They would take the ticket on the train. You get on the train, you roll along, conductor comes by on the train, says, can I see your ticket? You'd show him the ticket. He would have what's called a ticket punch. And they all had different shapes or symbols on them. This ticket punch had a round hole. You can see it, the round hole. And then it had a 1/2. So maybe they got half fare or something. Do you see the 1/2 punch on it? But anyway, here's one. Here's an August 1st, 1916 validator stamp from Farmer City, Illinois, on the CCC and STL. Remember, that's the Big Four. Cleveland, Cincinnati, St. Louis, Chicago, St. Louis, I should say. Okay, well, let's keep moving. This picture, August 31st, 1948. Now, what's really interesting, this is the Illinois Central Depot. The Big Four is over here. There's actually a passenger train in the depot. And by the way, I need to say something. Of all the hundreds of photos I have collected, I have not found one photo yet of anybody that ever took a photo of a train sitting at the depot on the Big Four in Farmer City. And I know they've got to exist out there somewhere. They're probably in attics all over the city, but I've never seen one. But anyway, there's a train sitting there. There's the tower. There's the Big Four depot. And the lunch counter is still there in 1948. That was kind of surprising to me. The next slide. By 1967, this is where I saw the for sale sign. By 1967, the depot's not being used by the railroad anymore. And I zoomed in on that right there, and it says for sale. Does anybody know who bought it? I don't know. It just disappeared. So the depot was gone shortly after 1967. The next photo, I want to talk about the interlocking tower. See the tower right there? Okay, notice how it's up high so the people in the tower can see what's coming both directions. An interlocking tower, by definition on a railroad, is a control point for railroad safety used to operate switches and signals to guide trains safely through junctions and complex track areas. It kind of functions like an air traffic control tower in a sense, preventing collisions by ensuring a clear and correct path is set for each train, using an interlocking system so that conflicting routes would not be activated at the same time. And so they would, signal would say, stop, any trains coming from this direction, stop, and this other line would say, go. And it would keep it where there would be safe operations. Jim Maltby, where are you, Jim? He's here, there he is. Jim Maltby here worked in this tower back in the day. Jim, you'll remember these pictures. The next picture is in the 1950s, an Illinois Central train going past the tower. Here's the Big 4 station. There's the tower. You can see. The next picture shows the tower. Jack Keefe took this photo in 1976. Tower's still standing. They didn't use the depot anymore, and the next picture shows they used a maintenance shed that was just a bit west of the tower. There's Illinois Central, here's the Big 4, and they put the New York Central System sign on it and this big cast iron sign that says Farmer City. There was 2 of those, one on each side of the depot, and I hear one still exists somewhere, but I haven't been able to track it down yet. So what they did later on, they took that cast iron, see it? They took that cast iron sign and they put it on a post right there where the 2 railroads crossed.
Mike, on the wall at the interlocking of the tower down in Monticello, is a picture of the Farmer City Tower, and I always pointed it out because it shows the rods coming out and going down the switch.
The siding, where you could control the siding from the tower. That's at the Monticello Railroad Museum. If you haven't been there, it's worth a visit. You will love it. Okay, Jack Keefe took this photo in June 1986, and by this time, all they had just past the tower was a little sign that said farm, and it was in Conrail blue. Let me show you some trains. This is somewhere in the early 50s, somewhere near Farmer City. This was an anhydrous ammonia train. And I don't know, this might be that's probably US 150 right next to the tracks there. So I don't know exactly where it was taken, but it's supposedly right here close in Farmer City. Early industries once served by the P&E included Alexander Lumber, Farmer City Fertilizer and Chemical, Farmer City Grain, Federal North Iowa, Tarker Coal Company, Wicks Lumber Company, Pacific Grain, and Tabor Seed. During the Penn Central era in 1976, Don Crimmen took a photo here of you can see the trains aren't very long anymore. This only has like 3 freight cars and a caboose, but this is what it looked like in the Penn Central area. See that green color that I was telling you about? When I was a little kid, I'd run down William Street and I'd see the little green caboose go by. That's all I remember. I was 13 years old. I had my camera. I didn't know what I was doing. No, I was 16 years old. I'm sorry. And I took this photo. The tower was still standing. And even as a 16-year-old, I'm going, that thing is ancient. And it's still standing. It might have not been in use even by this date. It was torn down shortly after. Some more pictures I took in 1980, a real cold day in March 1980. I took a picture of Conrail, had owned the line by this time, switching at some of the elevators. You can see the next picture, Conrail. Those are former Penn Central engines that are still in their black paint. Next picture, you can see the elevators there, the Empire elevators in Farmer City. The next picture, again, I wasn't a great photographer. I just had to get a picture of that engine, but there were trees in the way. I didn't care. I just took a picture of it with the trees. The next picture shows one of the Conrail engines. Anyway, I'm glad I got these pictures because they're hard to come by. The next picture wasn't taken by me, but a man named Barry Lennon on October 21st, 1980, took this picture of a train crossing at the tower at Farmer City. By 1990, things were winding down. The next picture shows a Conrail train coming through Farmer City. Things are starting to wind down. And just to let you know, the last time a train ran on that line through Farmer City was in 1996. Here's a picture out there by on 150 where it crosses Salt Creek. And a gentleman named Stan Uchka took a picture of this Conrail train. And they still had cabooses then. You don't see cabooses on trains anymore, unless you go to the Monticello Railroad Museum, right? And then the last picture I ever got in Farmer City of a train on this line was this picture I took in October 1995, 30 years ago. I took this picture, and that was the very last time I ever saw a train on the Big Four in Farmer City. So, the next picture was taken by Jack Keefe in 2018 when they tore out the tracks. Now, I am told that the line is not officially abandoned. It's rail banked. What that means is they can put in a trail, like a walking trail. They've done this over from Urbana. They're doing it from Urbana all the way to Danville. It's called the Kickapoo Rail Trail, I think. So they're doing this. Okay, this is part one of my presentation. Part two is I want to take you on a trip from Peoria to Indianapolis. Are you up for it? We're going to have to go fast because I don't want to keep you here too long. Is everybody okay? Are we okay? Are we okay, Susie? All right, Susie's ready, so we're ready. Let me switch over. I'm going to switch over on my computer, and then Susie will bring up the next photo. There it is. There it is. I love it. Okay, so I told you this line. I'm going to tell you the bigger story now. We focused mostly on Farmer City. Now I'm going to take you on a trip. This was the big Union Station in Peoria, Illinois. And it serviced several different railroads. Let me get my notes up. It opened in 1882. This photo was taken in 1885. This was built in the Second Empire architectural style. It was located on Depot Street, if you're familiar with Peoria, between State and Oak Streets, near the Illinois River. At its peak, it had 7 tracks in the station for passenger trains. It served, at that time, Peoria was the 4th largest rail hub in the United States. Can you believe that? And it served railroads such as the Chicago and Alton, the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy, Chicago and Illinois Midland, Chicago Northwestern, Illinois Central, Nickel Plate, Big Four, Peoria and Eastern, Pennsylvania Railroad, and TP&W. So, this is what the next one shows what it looked like in 1900. Then they built this beautiful train shed over it to cover, you know, if you're coming in inclement weather, snow, rain, hail, whatever, the cars are under this big shed so passengers could get off the train and on the train without getting soaked and all. So they built this beautiful train shed. By 1883 it was complete. March 1883 it was completed at a construction cost of $25,000, which would roughly be $800,000 today. So there's the train shed. The next picture shows you again the train shed. Isn't that amazing? By 1920, there were 110 passenger trains running in and out of the city every day in Peoria. It's just hard to imagine. Looking north in 1925, you can see the station, all the tracks, you can see the train shed. So what happened? Well, the next picture looks like the Hindenburg disaster. Here's what happened. Sadly and unexpectedly, on October 22nd, 1927, a freight train went by, or under the station, and there was a concrete mixer on a flat car, and it got kind of loose. It wasn't secured properly, and it swung out, and it hit every other stanchion, and that big old train shed came tumbling down. So here we are, October 22nd, 1927. There's that beautiful, expensive train shed. And the next picture shows this is what it looked like inside. It was a real mess. The next picture that we're looking at right now was what it looked like when they tore down the train shed. This is in 1940. This is what the station looked like. The next picture, which is in color, is wonderful. In the 1950s, this is what the Peoria station looked like with a Peoria and Eastern train. This is a train headed to Farmer City. The P&E quit using the station in 1955 because of cost. They had to go over a terminal road called the Peoria and Pekin Union, and so they didn't want that extra cost, so they began terminating. After 1955, they began terminating in Pekin instead of 9 miles further north to Peoria. But here's the station. Here's one of the trains headed to Farmer City on the right. There's a steam locomotive on the left. That's a nickel plate engine, but you're seeing the diesels at this time. So what happened? Well, the station burned. Remember, the Peoria and Eastern was the last railroad to use it. They quit using it in 55, so it sat empty for about 5 or 6 years. And then on August 26, 1961, it burned to the ground. The fire started in the baggage room, quickly spread to the rest of the station. No one was injured in the fire, but the station was, totaled. And we look at the next picture. This is August 1961. You can see that beautiful architecture. And then the next picture was Monty Powell photo from August 1961, a color photo showing what it looked like. So that's sad. It was a beautiful station. That would have been made a great museum, But anyway, remember I told you about Whiskey Bill earlier? Okay, trains coming out of Peoria would haul a lot of whiskey. And on December 5th, 1933, national prohibition ended in the United States, paving the way for the world's largest grain distillery, Hiram Walker and Sons, to be built in Peoria. And guess who serviced it? The Big Four, the Peoria and Eastern. So a lot of whiskey went through Farmer City. Meanwhile, 9 miles south of Peoria, on the east side of the Illinois River, the Peoria and Pekin Traction Company built this terminal station, and it opened April 30th, 1900. And this is where the Farmer City trains would also come into this. But this station was torn down right before World War II. The next picture just shows you back in the steam locomotive era, this is what a Peoria and Eastern train would look like. This one's headed westbound to Peoria Eastern Station on July 9th, 1943. The next picture just shows Pekin. They brought in this little wood depot. It's actually a Rock Island depot that they brought in from a little place called Coal Valley. They moved the depot to this location, and it became the terminus for the western terminus for the Peoria and Eastern. And Jack Keefe, who's with us tonight, got this picture in October 1963 of the station. It's no longer there. The next picture shows just past the station, there was a little engine house. You can see it. It still stands in Pekin. I'm going to go see it Thursday. I've never been to Pekin. I'm going to go to Pekin Thursday. But there it stands, still stands. But there's the train getting ready to head to Farmer City and all the way to Indianapolis. Here's the train at Pekin. Again in the diesel era. It wasn't a very big train, was it? 2 cars. This is toward the end. This is around 1957. Here's another picture of the train at Pekin in 1957, their last year of operation, 1957. The next one might be the last run. It was the last run. It was. I have it in my notes here. October 14th, 1957. Yep. Okay, this is coming out of Pekin. They crossed the Gulf Mobile, Ohio, or the Alton Railroad, at a place called East Yard. And so there's a P&E train coming. The next town that it would hit at milepost 18. Now, when I say milepost 18, that means 18 miles from Peoria Union Station, was a little town called Tremont. And here you can see the old Tremont United Methodist Church behind the depot in an early postcard view. You all get snow up here, right? Probably more snow than we get in Arkansas. But here's a train, Tremont, in the snow. Look at that. 2 steam locomotives, and they're stuck. They're stuck in the snow in Tremont. That's amazing. Here's another picture of Tremont Station around 1908. The next picture is Paul Stringham caught a picture of a steam doubleheader coming across the Prairie Creek Trestle just east of Tremont on October 5th, 1938. My late friend, Roger Holmes, caught this same spot, caught this westbound Penn Central freight in the early 1970s just east of Tremont. Same spot that you saw the earlier picture. The Tremont in 1965, Jack, thank you for taking this picture. In 1965, depot was looking kind of rough there. By 1977, let's go, can we go back? Yeah. By 1977, the depot is, let's go back. Can we go back one more, maybe? Okay, I'm sorry. Now we need to go ahead. Okay, so Jack got the next picture. Let's go to the next picture, and then the next picture. Okay, need to tell you this story. Railroad accidents, okay? This was reported in newspapers at the time of the terrible wreck on the Big Four. It happened November 19th, 1903, between Mackinac and Tremont, about 3.5 miles east of Tremont, about a mile west of Manier. This was, I'm not going to read you all the gory headlines, but I will say this: 31 men were killed and at least 15 injured in a head-on collision between a freight and a work train on the Big Four Railroad between Mackinac and Tremont. And what happened is, when the accident happened, it was a work train that the track wasn't set right. The train came into the siding, hit the work train, and that was the work train locomotive, and its boiler exploded. And all the workers were there. It was one of the worst accidents in Illinois Railroad history. 31 people perished in that accident. All right, back to the depots. We'll go back to the depot now. 1977, the depot at Tremont's still standing. The next picture shows it, and it was restored. It's one of 2 depots on the line that's restored. And it is now home of Eli's Coffee Shop. Anybody been there? Eli's Coffee Shop? Okay, I'm headed there Thursday to get some coffee. Mackinac at milepost 25.2 is an important junction with the Illinois Terminal and the Pennsylvania Railroad. There was another big accident, August 18th, 1949. Remember August 18th, because in 1965 there was a horrible accident in Bloomington on the same exact day. But let's talk about this one real quick. A 30-car eastbound Peoria and Eastern Railway freight train with locomotive number 41, 35 cars and a caboose left East Peoria at 5:30 p.m. It was due at Indianapolis at midnight, but derailed 16 cars when the engine turned over at Mackinac due to an open switch. Somebody left a switch open, and it turned over. P&E train number 90 went into the interchange track at approximately 40 miles per hour and struck a standing cut of cars that was delivered by the Illinois Terminal earlier in the day. And the cause was the maintenance crew failed to set the switch back. Engineer Hyatt of Urbana, head brakeman Frank Cheney of Urbana, and fireman, listen to this, fireman Roy Bean, B-E-I-N, of Farmer City, were killed in the wreck. So that was a tough one. There was a bunch of livestock cars, and it says dead and live cattle and sheep were strewn about the wreckage, some still in the cars. The wreck happened between 7:30 and 8 p.m. and knocked down a stretch of Illinois Terminal's overhead wire, which put the line out of service temporarily. Listen to this: a carload of explosives rested 10 feet from the engine's firebox. Wow. These newspaper accounts are something else. The older newspaper accounts you find with accidents, and there was a bunch of them, some of them are pretty gory. I wouldn't read them, and with children present. But anyway, 1949, Mackinac, train coming through. My late friend Edward Wayne Bridges took that photo. Jack Keefe has, this is in his collection, 1950s in Mackinac. You can see there's a passenger train approaching the depot at Mackinac. Here's 1965, the Mackinac Depot, again, Jack Keefe photo. Now, the next town is Danvers, and this is at milepost 35 from Peoria. This is the old depot at Danvers. What happened to Danvers? Another accident. May 17th, 1916, there was a Big Four wreck near Danvers. I don't have a lot of details on it, but they brought in the railroads would bring in the wreckers on rail, these big boom wreckers, and they would pick everything up. And so that's what's happening there. Next picture is 1965 in Danvers. You see the depot's looking pretty rough. And then we get to milepost 44, what the Big Four called the Alton Crossing in West Bloomington. This photo was taken March 30th, 1945. Westbound P&E passenger train stopped at the Bloomington Union Passenger Station. Now you may say, why at the Bloomington Union Station? Didn't they have their own station? They did. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Look at this. The next picture, they did postcards. Railroads always had colorized postcards of stations where passengers could buy them and then send hey, look where I was at today, and send it. They could mail it in the train because the train carried the U.S. mail. It's pretty cool. But this is the 1913 brick Alton passenger station that once stood at the 100 block of West Washington Street in Bloomington. It was intended initially for the Alton Railroad, but later it served the Peoria and Eastern Railroad and the Nickel Plate Railroad. Here's what it looked like in 1977. Beautiful station. Some of you may remember it. It's gone now, sadly. But here's what would happen when the P&E came in. Here's a train. This is a eastbound train. John Berriger III took this photo, them loading express. Speaking of that, let's talk about this car right here. The railroads carried the mail. It was called the Railway Mail Service, or the RMS. And they had cars that they called RPOs, the Railway Post Office. They could sort the mail. They could pick up the mail. They'd go through towns where they didn't stop. They would throw the mail out. They'd put out a hook and catch the mail. So some of you may have remembered that era. This is a Peoria and Eastern Railway Post Office car. Let's go to the next one. What did they do in the Railway Post Office car? Well, they would cancel the letters, like they still do today. Notice the cancellation on the letter. It says Indianapolis and Peoria. That's a Railway Post Office route on the railroad. And that was in 1896. And if you look up at the very top, after 5 days, return to Abe, and I can't quite read the last name. It may be Evans, Farmer City, Illinois. Isn't that neat? So I found a few cancellations like that. The next one, these are just some cancellations. Indianapolis and Peoria RPO route, Railway Post Office. The next picture shows Bloomington. This is a freight train coming through with the diesels. Here's the Corn Belt coming through Bloomington. Another picture of that's June 1957 there. That's not the last train. Next picture. There's a couple of the engines going through with a Gulf Mobile and Ohio passenger train right here, GM&O passenger train. Here's the Big Four coming through. Next. That's the last one. That's the last passenger train that came through Bloomington at the station. It's called the Corn Belt Special. This is October 14th, 1957. The next picture shows the train as well with the Bloomington station in the background. The next picture shows a wood caboose on a freight train. You don't see cabooses on freight trains anymore, but there's a caboose going through the Bloomington. That's August 1965. Next picture shows the downtown Bloomington station, which is long gone. But it was a station that was used by the Nickel Plate and the Peoria and Eastern. I don't know exactly what year it was built, but they quit using it in 1950. I do know that. Here's an early picture that says when it was new, and it said 1914. So maybe it was built in 1914 or somewhere in that. Does that sound right? 01? Oh, it was built in 01. Thank you. I knew you would know it. That's inside the depot. That's what it looked like in the agents area, not the waiting room. This is where the agents would sell tickets, and they had timetables on the wall, different roads all over the United States where they could help route people. There's a telephone. They had telegraph. They could look out the bay window here and watch the trains, but that's inside that very depot. Jack has this in his collection of there's a P&E passenger train going past the depot. But they put out a notice in 1950 in the newspaper, the New York Central System, Peoria and Eastern Railway, notice to the public. Basically, it just says, we're going to quit using the downtown station. We're only going to use the station, the Alton station that we saw earlier. Next picture, looking east at Bloomington. The depot is no longer in use. You can see it's kind of boarded up. The next picture. Now, here's what's really cool. In 1936, has anybody ever heard of the Rexall train? You know Rexall drugstores? The guy that owned Rexall said, I'm going to take a big steam locomotive and I'm going to streamline it. I'm going to make it look really good. And I'm going to send it on a national tour. They toured almost all the 48 contiguous states, showing off in 12 streamlined passenger cars all the cool things that they sell at the Rexall drugstore. And they'd stop in towns and people could walk through the train and see all the displays. Well, guess what? This was in the Mansfield newspaper in October 8th, 1936, said it's coming this way. So what did the New York Central do? They took this huge locomotive right here. This is a 482 Mohawk, number 2873, and here's what they did to it. They streamlined it, and they painted it. Now, this is colorized. I don't actually have a color photo of it. But this is what the Rexall train looked like. Well, check this out. Next picture. October 10th, 1936. That's downtown Bloomington. Right there. There's the Rexall train. They stopped there. 4,063 people walked through that train from 9 in the morning till 11:30 in the morning. And then that train took off and came through Farmer City. And somebody had to have got a photo of it coming through Farmer City, but it didn't stop in Farmer City, so probably, a lot of people probably didn't even know. Okay, I'm going to hurry along here. I've got a few more I want to show you. What happened? Well, steam locomotives were replaced by diesels. Now, I put this through artificial intelligence. to draw it up in color. I colorized it, so it looks a little weird. But anyway, it's AI. October 14th, 1947, after 78 years of steam locomotives on this line, the New York Central sent some newfangled technology to Peoria to test these diesel engines on the Peoria and Eastern, and they did. And this is what the engine looked like. It's an F3A, number 1612, and a booster unit. They were built in June 1947. Well, the test must have gone well because they didn't buy this is the kind of streamlined, what we call the car body locomotive, or down where we live, they called it the covered wagons. But anyway, they didn't get that style of locomotive. They ended up getting this style of locomotive. They ordered 14 of these GP7 road switchers, 1,500 horsepower each, between November and December 1950. And they used these pretty much for all the diesel era of the railroad. Here's another picture, 1962. So by May 1953, the Peoria and Eastern operated 211 miles of track that was operated by 700 employees, men and women. It was part of the 10,700-mile New York Central system. They had a total of 21 diesels compared with 42 steam locomotives before they dieselized. So you can see how they saved a lot of money by moving to diesel. They also invested in 7 EMD SW7 these are called switchers. They would switch in yards in Pekin, Bloomington, Urbana. This picture was taken by Monty Powell in January 1962 in Bloomington, downtown Bloomington. Here's another photo, October 1962 in Bloomington of one of the switchers. So that's how they dieselized. Now, the next picture shows how they would run the trains typically. It looks like they're kind of running backward, doesn't it? But they did this on purpose. This is called long hood first running, and it was to protect the crew. Kind of like the steam locomotives, the crew used to be way back. So that's kind of how they ran them, even though it looks like they're running backwards. But what happened? Remember that date I gave you, October 18th was a bad day for the railroad? Well, here's what happened. October 18th, 1965, in downtown Bloomington, they called it the $1 million crash. The paper called it the $1 million crash. Put 3 crewmen in the hospital. 5 diesel engines were damaged. Look at these pictures. Isn't this crazy? Look what it did to that one engine. What happened was this train was coming in and they were running long hood first, like I told you a minute ago. There's the long hood. There's the crew was here. They were coming into town with the freight train, and they come kind of around a curve, and here's the Bloomington switcher on the same track. They're both, running, and so they apply their brakes. It's got a big train behind them. Trains don't stop on a dime. You know that. They can't. And so all that weight pushed the train, and all that weight coming in behind this freight train just took that second engine and just kind of made it into a TP. Look at this. Isn't that incredible? The force of that must have been amazing. People all over Bloomington heard it. The newspaper account said it sounded like a bomb going off. So they took the 5915. It was the one that was TP'd. And they tried to, crane it a little bit. They ultimately just knocked it over on its side. I think they scrapped it in place. Here's the switcher that they hit. They punched that switcher pretty good in Bloomington. And then I told you they just knocked it over. And maybe, did they end up scrapping it in place? Do you remember, Jack?
Yeah, they did. Yeah,
okay.
It laid there for a couple of years.
For a couple of years? Oh my goodness. Wow, that's amazing. Hey, this is a funny photo. If you do away with the steam locomotives, you don't need the water tanks anymore, right? So here they are pulling the water tower down. Look at that guy running for his life. He must have been the guy that pulled it. Oh no, it's coming down. I hope he made it. I don't see any newspaper accounts where he didn't. I was just a kid in 1978. I took this picture of the Big 4 Freight House. That building still stands in downtown Bloomington, believe it or not. But it used to say Big 4 Freight House and had the New York Central logo. Okay, are we doing okay? I'm going to try to make this, we're going to go faster. I'm going to try to make this trip go faster. Okay, so now we're moving on from downtown Bloomington. We come to a tower called Dean. Jim, you worked at Dean Tower too. Yeah, so this gentleman right here worked in that tower. It protected the crossing of the Peoria and Eastern, the Illinois Central Railroad, and the Illinois Terminal Railroad. And inside, what did they do? I'm not sure every towerman or operator had a dog, But this picture came out, and there's the levers that operate, the signals and the switches and all inside the tower. That's up inside I believe that is Dean Tower. But apparently the operator had a dog, and, that was his friend. Jim, did you ever bring your dog to work? No? Okay. Okay. All right, next town, milepost 5404 is Downs, Illinois. The next one is Leroy, Illinois at milepost 60.9. This was the second P&E depot to be built there. The next picture shows the depot in later years. Beautiful depot. It's gone, by the way. It was sold and torn down. January 1955, a photo of Cub Scouts and parents boarding the 11:08 a.m. eastbound Peoria and Eastern train bound for Bloomington in Leroy. As early as 1953, the P&E petitioned the ICC, Interstate Commerce Commission, to discontinue passenger train service. Finally, 4 years later, after 88 years of daily passenger train service to Leroy, the end came on Monday, October 14, 1957. At 3:55 p.m., this was the last eastbound train at Leroy, train number 12. There they are leaving. I don't know who the photographer was. I think it was the local newspaper. Got this picture, and the next picture, see it going off in the distance? The end of an era. After 88 years, the last passenger train on the Big Four in Leroy. The next picture just shows September 10th, 1965. Jack took this photo. The depot was used as a local business and was torn down a few years later. Next picture, you know where this is at. We've already talked about this town, right? So I'll go to the next town. How about this? Mansfield. This is where they crossed the Wabash Railroad, and they had kind of a Union Station there. So we're seeing the Wabash line, crossing the Wabash line that went to Chicago. Here's the Mansfield Union Depot. I think it's in the northeast quadrant, the tower in the southwest quadrant, looking along the Peoria and Eastern Railroad. The next picture, Jack took this. Notice the second part of the depot's gone now. It's really not a Union Station. That's really just the Wabash side of it. But they put that cast iron sign that says Mansfield right there. Next picture. Yeah, there's the cast iron sign. Just like the one at Farmer City, all the towns had cast iron signs on their depot, and they put the New York Central. Next. Then they took the sign down and they put it on some posts, just like they did here in Farmer City. And it showed up on eBay. It probably went for several hundred. I don't know who has it, but it would be great to see. There it is, Mansfield. Okay, next town. Let's see, what is this town? This is Mahomet. Yeah, Mahomet, milepost 83.4. This is the Mahomet depot. You can see the signal train order board here. Next picture, Mahomet. This is in 1963, and it's interesting. Notice half of the depot is now gone. So I don't know if half of it burned down, but the half to the right of the depot is gone. The next picture shows Roger Puda was riding a Peoria and Eastern train, took this picture in April of 1965. Notice the cast iron sign for Mahomet. Then we come into Champaign. Beautiful station in Champaign. Absolutely beautiful, but there's not many pictures of it. The next picture shows a steam train. This is early around 1900, coming into Champaign on the Big Four. The next is an aerial. 1919, they took a biplane and got some aerial photos, and there it is right there. That's the Big Four station right there. Next picture. Steam locomotive at the Champaign depot. Next picture. Champaign, cast iron sign like the other towns. This is the Wabash, Illinois terminal depot over here. Next. Look at this. This is Champaign, October 12th, 1948. Guess who's on the back of that passenger car? Harry S. Truman. And look, the people showed up. Look at this. They climbed trees. They're in the trees. That was probably the last big hurrah in Champaign at that station. Pretty amazing. Next picture. Colorized picture, or not colorized, but actually a color slide of Champaign. Next one. Champaign, there's that cast iron sign that I was telling you about. Next. There's the Champaign depot by 1955. That's not right. I'm sorry. By 1962, when Jack Keefe took this photo, The depot wasn't used by the railroad anymore, so there was an IGA put in there. If any of you are familiar with Champaign, it was called Rick's IGA. Okay, let me tell you the story, because I had to dig. It took me a long time to find this information, but here's what happened. Let me tell you the story. The Rick's IGA built a building and connected to the depot, so now the depot didn't really look like a depot anymore because I had a building connected to it, and they used the depot as warehouse space. Well, on a night in August 1967, there was a night watchman in the depot, and a guy broke in to the depot, and he killed the night watchman, and he set the whole thing on fire. And so, next picture, that's all that's left of that beautiful station in Champaign. August 1967. That's an interesting story. I'm going to be doing this presentation for the Champaign Historical Museum in June or July of next year, and I'll tell more detail about that story. Now we're coming into Champaign. We're leaving Champaign. Here's the original early interlocking tower in Champaign. It was replaced later by this nice brick tower that was built in 1924. Inside the tower, there was a longtime operator there named Dick Stair, who is well known in the railroading community. And notice all the control levers over on the left side of the photo. That's where they crossed the Illinois Central. This is Urbana in 1937, passenger train coming into Urbana. Here's a color slide, pretty rare color steam locomotive in Urbana. That depot survives. Here's 1965 in Urbana. The depot's looking pretty rough. The next picture was taken, I'm not sure what year it was taken, but the depot looks like it's about to fall down. And then the next depot shows, I took this picture in 2018. The depot today is called the Station Theater. If you've ever been to the Station Theater in Urbana, you're in the old Big Four depot. All right, let's keep moving. Here's the old Urbana depot that was down by where their big shop complex was. And this shows a map. They had a huge shop there. Roundhouse, turntable, machine shop, back shop, car shop. This picture shows the roundhouse, how big it was, how many stalls it had. Next picture, colorized postcard of all the shops. This is in Urbana. It's now part of a MTD bus depot, I think, in Urbana. Here just shows there's where the Urbana depot is, and the shops were in this area. This is a 1940 aerial photo. Next photo just shows a zoom in on the shops, big roundhouse and turntable right here, car shops and whatnot there. The next one, the shops are up in here somewhere in this aerial. Next one, this is what they called Criminal Hill. I don't know if everybody heard that term in Urbana, but anyway, there's the roundhouse right there. You can see it in this aerial. The next, just the roundhouse, how huge it was. They serviced the locomotives there. The next one shows the doors, the stalls to the roundhouse. Next one, inside the roundhouse, some of the machinery, some of the men. Next, we'll go through these pretty quick. This is the roundhouse again. I have a lot of pictures I've come across of the shops area. They would rebuild cars back in the wood car era. They would repaint cars. There's Big Four car there. Yeah, just shows you some of the men that worked there. Hard work. They worked out. It was a huge terminal. Yeah, it was the largest terminal for the Peoria and Eastern, for the whole railroad. And we're talking about from Peoria to Indianapolis. Yeah. And so, anyway, let's go through some of these pictures, just showing the workmen, the cars, the shops. You get the idea. Sure. Oh, you do? Okay.
In the southwest corner of our property, there's still a marker for the PNI.
One of those concrete markers? Okay. I'll see you tomorrow.
You can pull into our lot, it's right on the corner of our property.
Really?
Right out front on the road.
Oh, wow. I'm going to drive from Farmer City to Danville tomorrow just to trace all this. So, yeah, thank you for that tip. Appreciate it. All right. Let's continue. Yeah. We'll get through these shop pictures. I just want to show you there's a bunch of cabooses, their car shop where they did passenger cars, worked on passenger cars next, some of the steam locomotives in the shop. These photos were taken in 1905, published in a University of Illinois book, engineering book. But anyway, 1905 at the shops. It was huge. It probably employed over 1,000 people. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question to come back to Farm City. I remember as a little girl up by the Illinois Central.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
There was a big, long, green building that they called it the Railroad House. And I think what the people that would ride the train or something, it was like a boarding house.
A boarding house.
Train,
Interesting.
yeah.
What my research has shown a lot is that they would, in Farmer City, you know, the depots were over a half mile from the business district. And down in the business district, there was the commercial hotel. And that was a really, really nice hotel. And what they would have is they had drayage service. Now, what that means is they would have horse-drawn carts. This is probably right around before automobiles. They would go up to the depots, pick up the passengers, bring them to downtown. Story goes, I got to tell you a funny story. The story goes like this. Passenger comes in from Indianapolis on the Big Four. He gets out the Big Four depot. He tells the drayage operator, I need to transfer to the Illinois Central. Well, the Illinois Central depot is just a few feet away. The drayage operator says, come on board. He takes them all the way downtown, goes through the city loop, takes them all the way back up to the depot, and charges them for that money. When all he had to do is take a few steps, he would have been at the other depot. And one of the newspaper stories says, one guy, he did it to punch the drayage guy in the face. Anyway.
Wonder if maybe this building was maybe for some of the railroad.
Oh, where the railroad workers? I'm going to look into that. I will look into that. I have not heard that one, but I will look into that one for you. Okay, let's wrap up. We're about at Urbana, and so we're going to be leaving Urbana. Here's the shops again. Next picture, Urbana. Can you go back to that one? Remember the old Urbana Depot picture I showed you? There it is. And that building right there had a fire, and I believe that was the railroad YMCA. Urbana is one of the few towns in the nation that had a city YMCA, a railroad YMCA, and some other YMCA.
Yeah, the University YMCA still stands.
Okay. So anyway, I thought that was kind of a neat Urbana fact. Okay, we're leaving Urbana. Bye-bye, Urbana. Oh, bye-bye, shops. Here we go. Okay, let's go one more. That's a train that they use for testing at the University of Illinois. Let's go to the next one. Shops. Go to the next. Next. Okay, that's my last Urbana shop photo. Let's go to the next one. So they put up a sign, Peoria and Eastern at Urbana. That's 1972. Let's go to the next one. This is the Urbana yard office. This building still stands in Urbana. Check out the van. Don't you love the GMC or Chevy van there? Next one. The Illinois terminal used trackage rights. They used trackage rights over to Danville once they abandoned their own line. They went through a little place called Glover. There's an elevator there, or was an elevator, maybe still is. This is in 1967. These towers were close to trains running by at high speeds. The Chicago and Eastern Illinois, later Missouri Pacific, ran through here. And in 1971, next picture will show what happened to the Glover Tower. There was a derailment, and it took out that tower. That was December 27th, 1969. That's all that's left of the Glover Tower. There's the steps. Ugh, that's dangerous. Dangerous job. Railroading is dangerous. Let's go to the next one. St. Joseph, Illinois. There's a passenger train stopped at St. Joseph. Next one shows the St. Joseph Depot in undated photo there. Next one. There's St. Joseph. Jack took this photo in 1966. And there's 1970. That depot still stood. The white depot, the picture before, still stood. And now we're going to Ogden, Illinois. And you see the Ogden Depot. Okay. Then we go to, next, Fithian. This depot languished for quite a while. You can see it in color here, but it was in rough shape. This is 1980 at Fithian. Next. Muncie, early depot, gone probably way early on. Next town, Oakwood. Again, very early depot's probably gone in the 20s or something. There's Oakwood and the Illinois terminal trackage that went through there as well. Next. Okay, we're coming into Danville. Milepost 122.8. They had a yard called Hillary Yard. Most of it's gone now, but this was taken on April 22nd, 1950. Next. Hillary Yard, 1952. Next. Hillary Yard, 1966. Jack took this photo. Next. In the Conrail era, 1992. This would have been just shortly before they quit using the line. Next. There was a tower at Whiten in Danville. And this tower was wiped out in fall 1951. Train derailed and it took out that tower. Next picture will show the rebuilt tower and the Conrail train going by there. Whiten Tower, next one, shows the signals in the tower there. Next. Danville had a beautiful depot too. Beautiful architecture. Next depot shows next picture shows a colorized photo of that depot. Next one, colorized. This next one shows a steam train in August 1950 coming into Danville at the depot there. Danville Junction. Next one, again at Danville, there's the beautiful Danville depot right there that was ultimately torn down. Next one just shows some crewmen there in Danville by their steam locomotive. Next. Diesel at the Danville station. Next one, Jack took this photo, and I'm thinking, was this the freight house, Jack, that they used later? Okay, so they used this at the end. There's a place, I'm going there tomorrow for lunch, called Jocko's Pizza. Anybody been to Danville? You know,
I was just going to ask you about it. If you've been there or not.
no, that's where I'm going. That Jocko's Pizza was built right where this was. This was the last Danville depot. So it's kind of a railroad-themed pizza place, kind of neat. So I'm going to go try that out. All right, now we're leaving Danville, Corey Tower. This is the last station, or the last place in Illinois, and that's where I'm going to stop because the next one is Indianapolis Union Station. I'm not going to talk about Indiana tonight. I just wanted to pretty much cover the Illinois ones. But there's the August 1970 picture of the Indianapolis Union Station. So I got two things I want to conclude with. What happened to the railroad? Why did it go out of business? Why isn't it here anymore? Well, it all started back in 1960. There was a railroad called the Minneapolis-St. Louis that brought a lot of traffic to Peoria to be bridged with the Peoria and Eastern. They merged with the Chicago Northwestern. The Northwestern had other lines into Chicago, so they said, we don't need this anymore. So there goes a whole lot of bridge traffic. The lines starting in 1973, they started abandoning portions of the P&E over near Indianapolis, near the Indianapolis Speedway. There was 1982, there was a flood that caused a washout near Danvers, Illinois, and a train derailed on it. After that, they said, we aren't going to use this line, it's not safe, so they started detouring it over another railroad. And so it just declined, traffic declined. Let me give you just a few figures here. In 1962, the railroad handled 213,408 cars. In 1963, 197,870 cars. There was a decline there. Let me just give you these quick numbers. It'll tell you kind of the story. By 1971, they handled 46,000 cars. By 1975, they handled 33,000 cars. So just a big decline in cars. That's what happened. And also, the next picture will show the Pennsylvania Railroad, Newark Central merged to create the Penn Central. So there was mergers that took place. But the last thing I want to talk about is always the last thing on a train, and that's the caboose. This is a wooden caboose. You're probably wondering, what did they do? Well, they had crew on the front end of the train. They'd have the engineer and the fireman, and sometimes what they called the head brakeman. On the back end of the train, they'd have the conductor. He's the boss of the train. And they would have a rear brakeman and maybe a switchman. Well, what did they do? Well, early on, look at this next picture. They lived in the cars. They would go out. They would have bunks in the cars where they could actually sleep. They had a stove where they could cook. The restroom probably just dumped on the tracks. But anyway, they had a cupola up top where they could look over the top of the train to see if there's any smoke emitting from the wheels, what we would call a hot box. And that's what was the purpose of the cabooses are. They've now been replaced by modern technology that can kind of handle, what the people used to handle up in the cupola. The last, this last picture is just Peoria and Eastern caboose. And I told you, when I was a kid, I'd run out there, see a little green go by. That was probably one of these guys. And that takes us to the last slide, which is my contact information. I do have cards here if anybody wants a card. If you have any questions or comments or want to stay in touch, I'd love to stay in touch with you. Yes, sir.
I find it ironic on the last picture, it said the road to the future, and that was one of the biggest bankruptcies in America.
Yes, the road to the future and the bankruptcy. Yeah, they were trying to be optimistic, They were just trying to be optimistic. Anybody have any questions or comments? Yes, sir.
How about the Green Diamond?
The Green Diamond. I did a presentation on the Illinois Central a couple years ago for the Farmer City Historical. I'm going to come back, and I'm going to do one just on the Green Diamond. My dad would tell me about the Green Diamond. It was a streamlined passenger train that debuted in 1936. And it was green, and it looked kind of weird. They called it the tomato worm. And I've got all kinds of pictures and all the history on that. Yeah, so I'll be back to do a presentation on that. Yep. Yeah, I will.
I'll tell you a story about that.
Yeah.
In 1936, they came through Farmer City.
Uh-huh.
And went to Clinton.
Uh-huh.
My grandfather and my mom's dad were killed by the Green Diamond in Clinton, Illinois.
Oh, my goodness. They were in a cross.
1936.
No,
Now, if you go to Clinton today, west of the square, there's a viaduct.
right?
That's where it happened.
Really? Oh, I'm so sorry. November
They
the...
went to Decatur to get parts or something.
Yeah.
There was 4 people in the car. Came
Wow.
back to that stop. They had those old lights that swings back and
Yes,
forth.
the wigwag.
Yeah, there was a passenger train going through there.
Oh.
So they seen the passenger train had left.
Oh.
But the light thing kept swinging. They said, well, that thing's not working. So they pulled out. The Green Diamond was just leaving the station
Oh, no.
and hit that car, and it
Demolished it.
bodies and part everything.
Oh.
He was going 40 miles an hour by the time he hit
And that was 1936.
November 10th, 1936.
Yeah, and see, the train debuted in 36, so it was fairly new then. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I don't have a question about
Huh?
trains, but it just made me think at my house, we actually have the original, or I don't know if it's original, but we have the Seymour train depot from Seymour, Illinois is at my house.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think it says 1929 on the outside, I think that, but it's in really good condition.
Is it a photo of the depot or
The depot.
the?
The actual depot.
It's on a little pond, right?
Yeah,
I see
yeah.
that exit.
Oh, you have the actual depot. Oh, wow. What?
I don't really think about it too
What?
much, but,
Which railroad? Seymour.
Seymour, so route 10.
Route 10. So Illinois Central Depot, I'm guessing? Is that right?
That's part of the,
The Gilman line?
No,
from Champaign
Havana line.
that goes through Bonneville, Seymour.
Oh, to Whiteheath. Okay.
Also one in Whiteheath.
Wow.
Privately owned and it's falling apart.
Yeah, I've seen Whiteheath.
Would like to get it,
Yes.
but nobody will sell it.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that, and I've watched that little smokestack at the top just
Yeah.
gradually do this. Yeah, the Whiteheath Depot still stands.
Like really good condition. There's still pictures of like someone's baby.
Really?
Like on the wall, but like it's in excellent.
Could you send a picture of it to me? Be sure and get my card before you leave. Does anybody have a question? Yes, comment.
Comment.
Yes.
That is the best collection I have ever seen of the Urbana shops.
Oh,
That's
oh,
really
well, thank you. Thank you. I taught at the University of Arkansas for several years, so I worked with the University of Illinois. I did a Whistle Stop West program on Amtrak with them in conjunction with the U of I. And I contacted the U of I, and they have those. They sent them to me. Yes.
I actually have a pencil drawing from 1949 of the Urbana station.
Uh-huh.
That is the theater now.
Oh, you
But
do?
My dad's cousin drew it, and he gave it to my dad, and then I inherited it
Oh,
from
nice.
my father. And it, I look at that and I think, it's great to have it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's got all these buildings that were all there in 1949.
Really?
Yes.
Can you take a picture of it and send it to me? I would love that. Yes. Yes. Yes, sir.
And I came across, I had heard about the Peoria and Eastern,
Uh-huh.
I was interested in it.
Yeah.
I think I found one of the last diesel engines, or there was a diesel engine from the railroad in the museum.
Yes.
It's at the Baltimore and Ohio.
It is at the Baltimore and Ohio Museum, the 8905, and it is restored in Conrail paint.
Yeah.
There is one of their GP7s
Oh, there is?
that's, it's Nittany Bald Eagle is how it's painted, and it's on some short line somewhere in Pennsylvania right now. It's out of service, but it still exists.
Okay.
It's got a cut nose because they went through the Paducah rebuild.
I know for sure there is a ex-New York Central in Gibson City. Not Peoria and Eastern, but it's New York Central.
Oh, yeah, on the Bloomer line? On the Bloomer line.
It's still got the torpedo tubes.
On the torpedo tube, yes. Yes, sir.
I just, comment, your comment, seeing the green on the booths.
Uh-huh.
In passing by, I grew up in Pekin.
Okay.
About 6 blocks north of the joint Santa Fe, P&E, where they combine.
Okay, yes.
Peek into that joint yard.
Yes.
downtown. And as a kid, yeah, I remember I'd hear the whistles, and my mom would walk out with me or let me go out to the sidewalk, and I'd look down the street and I'd see the cars. I remember that green logo on a
Yes.
boxcar or the.
Yes, the boxcars had the green too.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Pekin is fascinating to me, and I've never been there, but I'm going to go there Thursday. Yes. Anybody comment? Jim?
Down at Monticello Railroad Museum, there is a post office car, railroad post office car.
Yes.
On display down there.
Yes. Railway post office car. It's is that an Illinois Central one?
It's
That's-
painted Illinois
it's-
Central colors, but anyway.
Okay. It is an IC car. It's at the Monticello Railway Museum. If you want to go inside a railway post office car and see how they had all the little slots to sort the mail and the bags and how the hook, that I talked about, they have a wonderful display at the Monticello Railroad Museum.
Just finished a new building over there, added on to the train building.
Yes, I
And
saw
the building
pictures.
Just finished, and they're running rail into it as we speak.
Wow.
I went by there today, coming out of Monticello.
It just gets better and better at the Monticello Railroad Museum. You've got to go see it. Yes.
At Monticello, there's the interlocking tower that was newly built,
Yes.
and it was named Stair Tower.
Stair Tower.
That was for Dick Stair, who was the